Hello and welcome to Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Corey Erdman alongside Morgan Campbell. Morgan, we have our bell back.
The bell is back.
There we go. There we go. Good timing because it is Mayweather Berto fight week. If you didn't notice, we have a big fight this week, but it doesn't really feel like we have a big fight this week at all.
Well, because it's not a huge fight. It's big because one guy in it is big, but it's less than a farewell fight. It's a little bit anticlimactic, but again, this is what happens. This is the postseason barnstorming tour like they used to have in baseball back in the day.
We'll get into that plenty later on in the show. We'll talk about the second episode of Mayweather Berto All Access. Plenty of goodness on those reality shows. We'll get into Stevenson Karpency, which would be this Friday here in Toronto. So you and I have been on the fight beat for that as well, and plenty more. But we have to begin with this past weekend. I just got off a plane from Corpus Christi, where I did the PBC on CBS broadcast. And Morgan, one thing that I learned is that when you start scoring fights on national television, that is the same day that everybody on Twitter stops liking you. You would think that by scoring this fight for Tomoki Kameda, or by scoring this fight by a particular margin for Tomoki Kameda, that I went online and insulted everyone's mothers, basically.
Well, you had it, 15-12 for Kameda?
Correct.
And then there was a guy that was furious with you because he had it 14-13 for Kameda.
Yes, in the same sentence, he said, you were way off with that score. I had it 114, 113. Do you not look at what you just typed?
Because clearly that one round was crucial and determinative. And what really confused me about that fight, because you scored it your way, I had it pretty... my scorecard was very similar. So when they started announcing the scores, they said 17-11. I think that there was a 15-12 in there. I thought, okay, for Kameda.
Yeah.
And then when they said, and still champion, Jamie McDonnell, I had to wonder. That is, to me, a robbery of the year candidate. Except all kinds of people are out here saying that, and smart people too, not just the rampant homers, and
well, their scorecards were even crazier.
Yes,
because the international broadcast they aren't rampant homers. In fact, the international broadcast is hired by Al Heyman, so you can't say that they were paid off to score for the A side, who was Tomoki Kameda, who's the home fighter. Right, but they had an 11-1 or something to that degree for Jamie McDonnell. After 10, they had a 9-1 McDonnell.
Which I
guess it would have to be 11-1 because the 12th had the knockdown.
And I don't see it. I don't know how that happened. If you go back and watch the fight, and if you guys are watching, listen, tweet at us. I'm at Morgan P. Campbell. He's at Corey_Erdman.
I've had enough. Don't tweet at me anymore. I don't want to hear anything more about the scoring this fight.
I don't need the vitriol, but just help me understand how McDonnell won all these rounds when the first 5 rounds of the fight, Kameda was doing everything that Kameda wanted to do. McDonnell was moving forward. He wasn't cutting the ring. Kameda was landing clear punches 2, 3, 4 in a row. There was that one sequence where Kameda just landed 4 jabs straight, body and head. And all McDonnell did was just take them. And I understand, aggressiveness is part of the equation that you use to score rounds. But it's effective aggression. And I don't think getting punched in the face is necessarily effective, especially when you're not landing anything in return, which is what happened for, 6 of the first 7 rounds of that fight. So yes, McDonnell came on late. Yes, he scored that knockdown. But did he do enough late to negate everything Kameda had done in the early rounds? No. But to the people that scored the fight for McDonnell, they say, well, it's not a matter of negating what Kameda had done early because McDonnell done more, and I just didn't see it.
I didn't see that, and especially in the early rounds, I saw a lot of jabs falling short from McDonnell. He was very, very active. Obviously, he threw a lot of punches.
Right.
I saw a lot of them falling short. And again, clearly you score this round by round, but in general, to really generalize things, I saw McDonnell doing some better things as the fight wore on, but then I saw Kameda countering those and replying to them in the same way. I thought that the most telling shots throughout the fight, and again, this isn't a punching machine, this is a boxing match. We've gone over this many, many times. I thought that Kameda scored the most effective blows throughout the fight as well. Did McDonnell's pressure start to mount and start to have an effect on Kameda later on in the fight? It absolutely did.
Yes.
That's why, people were mad at my scorecard being so wide early on, but McDonnell absolutely took some of those later rounds.
Right.
That's why it got to 115, 112.
Yes.
Which I don't think is a crazy score.
Not at all.
And I haven't rewatched the fight, but that's not that isn't a blowout.
No, honestly, it looked to me like the fight we saw. 8-4 with a knockdown. 8-4 with the winner on the losing end of a 10-8 round.
Right.
Yeah, 15-12. Makes perfect sense. When you watch the early rounds, Kameda was moving. McDonnell wasn't cutting off the ring. And again, you have to ask yourself, like, which fighter is doing what he wants to do, right? Kameda wanted to move left. McDonnell, I'm sure, didn't want to follow him around the ring. I'm sure he wanted to cut off the ring, make the ring small, and he wasn't able to do it. And this is what when we talk about ring generalship, this is what we talk about. So it's not just a matter of moving forward, because anyone can just move forward. If you're moving forward, taking more punches than you're giving, then to me, you're not winning the round. I mean, this is why I don't make the big bucks to judge the fights. But we also know we're in Texas, and Texas has a history of these crazy decisions. But
usually on the side, when that there are a lot of things that make this unusual.
Yes.
Because usually, again, they're on the side of the home fighter, so to speak.
Right.
Who in this case was Tomoki Kameda, because McDonnell isn't advised by Al Heyman. He doesn't have. He might be now after he beat the guy twice. But
is it the Don King thing where Heyman just gets options on whoever wins no matter what?
Well, that is certainly offered before the fight. To my knowledge, McDonnell did not sign a deal like that. So I don't think that if you have the grand conspiracy theory about these scores, I don't think that impacted the judges. The other thing that I find weird about this fight, and this might be the craziest example of scoring, in that I can't remember a fight where the scores have been such polar opposites that I've seen online. Like for some people to have a 10-2 for McDonnell and other people to have a 10-2 for Kameda.
Right.
I can't think of another example of a fight that could have possibly been scored that way. So maybe this was just the most evenly matched fight of all time with 12 swing rounds. But I think I've never seen something like this.
No, and I understand that each person has their own tastes, right, and their own kind of prejudices in how they view fights and how they score fights. But yeah, even that doesn't explain this disparity in scores, because you see that in 7-5 fights, right? And usually in those fights, it's actually a dispute about 4 rounds. Yes.
There's like these 4 rounds that were really closely contested, and I thought this guy bested him in this round, whatever. This apparently every single round was up for debate.
And again, listen, and I'm not even trying to start fights, although I might be right now, but just like not facetiously, not sarcastically, not snarkily, tweet at me, let me know what it was McDonnell was doing to win all those rounds, just because I honestly was not seeing it. I was seeing Kameda move like he wanted to move. I was seeing Kameda land more clean punches. And I just don't think that forward movement by itself negates all the other things Kameda was doing.
I just found it interesting. And before I left the arena, obviously I saw the tweets and then sort of polled everyone around me in the arena. So I thought maybe at first it was a perspective thing. I thought, because everyone that I talked to in the arena that wasn't Dave Bontempo on the international broadcast and weren't the judges, thought that Kameda won.
Yes.
Crowd was booing. Everyone that I was working with thought that Kameda won.
Right.
And again, you can think, you guys are paid by Al Heyman, so you thought that Kameda won. I even asked, I went through press row.
Well, I'm not paid by Al Heyman, and I think Kameda won.
Right, and you were at home too, so that dispels my perspective thing. I thought, okay, maybe everyone at home thought McDonnell won, and everyone live thought it was a different thing. But that's not the case at all. There are people at home who scored this by a wide margin for Kameda as well.
Yeah, and it's just, it just seems to be a matter of what you value in a fight. And there are those people, and you come across them all the time. We had them tweeting at us after Mayweather Pacquiao.
Yeah,
just
pressure.
Saying, as long as you move forward, you win. Mm-hmm. And if this is a street fight and you just move backwards, does that mean you win the fight? Well, it's not a street fight.
Yes, if you're punching him more often, it absolutely does mean that you won the fight.
Right.
Yeah, that's...
So, I don't get it. And the person I feel worse for, obviously, is Kameda, because now it's twice.
Sure.
And you can't have a rubber match after you lost the first 2.
No, it's pretty tough.
Whereas
you have to have
if he gets the decision to go his way, that sets up a third. But more power to Jamie McDonnell. All kinds of exposure for his plastering business.
Man.
And
yes.
It brings him one big step closer to leaving boxing behind and just plastering full time, which is much safer.
Much safer.
And you don't risk... Because he could, the crazy decision went his way this time. It might go against him next time. You don't have that in plastering.
By the way, we asked him in the fighter meeting as well. Like, hey, did did you advertise for the plastering business or whatever? He said, yeah, it was on my trunk. So what you suggested last time about him putting the plastering business on his trunks.
Yes.
He knew.
Because as we said,
put it on the trunks.
This is not the UFC. He can do whatever he wants.
Absolutely.
He doesn't got to run anything by Dana
Endorse.
White.
You saw Kameda's trunks. It's like a Swedish hockey jersey.
Yeah, he looked like a NASCAR car.
Yes, yeah.
Like
yes, whatever you want.
Big STP. Like,
I was very annoyed with the Kamedas, I have to say, because the one like Japanese restaurant downtown Corpus Christi, they ate there every single day, and there was like a clan of 50 Kamedas there, or like 50 hangers on, and they took up the entire restaurant. And I was sitting, there was the only space in the restaurant because of Team Kameda was at the bar, right at the sushi bar, and they were causing some real havoc in the kitchen of the sushi bar.
who paid?
That's a good question.
Is that coming out of his purse, out of his per diem?
Is that coming out of Al Heyman's pocket? Is that coming out of...
Yeah.
Well, because Daiki was on the card too, and Daiki lost. Daiki lost to a Mexican journeyman on the undercard.
Yeah,
And we taped that for CBS, by the way, and I scored it against Kameda.
Right.
So just
So
in case anyone thinking, whatever, I scored it against Kameda, and the other guy won.
Right. I'm just wondering. I'm just hoping Kameda didn't leave Corpus Christi like owing Al Heyman money.
Yeah.
After having blown through his per diem and had to get dances for his whole family.
The entire restaurant, they were ordering everything, any kind of tempura, anything. Was at that table. All right. When we come back, we'll touch quickly on Dirrell-Rubio as well, which is a much easier fight to score.
Yes.
And then we'll get into some Mayweather Berto, some Stevenson, Karpency, and plenty more right here on Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Welcome back to Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Corey Erdman and Morgan Campbell here with you in the Fight Network studios, broadcasting on Sirius XM channel 167. We touched on Kameda McDonnell for an entire segment. I
didn't think it would last that long.
I didn't think so either, but scoring gets people really fired up.
Yes, it does.
A fight deserving of much less time, which is much easier to score. Anthony Derell, Marco Antonio Rubio, which is the main event of that card, even though everyone sort of viewed the co-feature as the fight that you tune in for. An absolute blowout for Anthony Derell over a Marco Antonio Rubio that just seemed dead in the ring entirely. At 168, he told us he had to cut down from 210 to get down to 168, which for a 35, 38-year-old man, I think he's 38 now.
Yes.
That's a lot, man. Well, you can't possibly focus on training, even if you have something left in the tank.
Yeah,
if you have to cut that much weight.
It becomes a fat camp, for lack of a better word. And and Rubio had all of every trick in the shot fighter playbook. Rubio had it. He had when Derell would hit him, he had the hit me. He made the hit me again face.
Yep.
Just kept walking.
He has a really good one too.
He had I think there was the double punch at some point.
Yeah, he had the Emmanuel Augustus double punch to the body. The Power Rangers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he also had the spin the guy away from the referee and hit him in the balls.
Oh yeah. That was a good
all
one.
The shot fighter tricks. The only thing he didn't do was just like maneuver action to his corner every round, so that when the bell rang, he wouldn't have to walk across the ring. He could just sit like Frankie Swindell used to do. Right? That's the only shot fighter trick he didn't use. And it just got to the point where, okay, you can take the punch, fine. But why? And on the broadcast, they're saying, well, maybe he becomes a gatekeeper now, but is it even worth it for him to become a gatekeeper? If he has to lose 40 pounds to get down to this weight limit to just turn around and get his butt kicked by, a prospect or a title hopeful, is there enough money in that role for Rubio to keep doing this indefinitely? That I can't speak for Rubio. Maybe that's enough money for him. It just doesn't seem like it would be a lot of money overall for someone to keep doing this.
Yeah, and again, that is up to him, whether he has enough in the bank to make it worth his while, whether he has some other options, but it certainly isn't good for his health. No. Because he took a pounding against Derell, like an absolute pounding, and fantastic. I was really impressed that he was able to take those shots because he couldn't even take them that well against middleweights, and maybe that has to do with the fact that he had to cut from 210 down to 160.
So this might be an easier weight cut. Maybe for him. I'm only dropping 40 pounds instead of 50.
Right. Maybe those extra 10 pounds kept him on his feet, but and now he's revealing himself to be is a little too tough for his own good. Because if he's knocked out in the second round, that's 8 fewer rounds of punching he has to take. But if your chin's great, you're now he's Tex Cobb. Yeah,
and he's just here taking a beating every time out. And again, I just don't know why it's worth it to him and to his people and to Nacho Beristain. And who are these coaches saying, yeah, you know what? I saw in your last fight, you looked horrible, but I can fix it. I don't know what there is to fix with Rubio.
No, and honestly, it's up to Nacho at this point to not do it. But this is his first fight with Nacho Beristain.
Right.
So to a degree, I can understand, because Rubio had basically decided to walk away from the sport after the Triple G fight. He said, okay, I'm just going to, he operates like a boxing gym that is next door to his house.
Yes.
And he was just sitting around, sort of decided he was going to go in and try and lose a little weight just to exercise again, started going for a couple runs and decided, okay, I'm going to go train with Nacho for a little bit, got the call for this fight. I can see why the rationale was there for him and for Nacho to say, okay, maybe he was weight trained against Triple G. Triple G is one of the best fighters in the world. Okay, we couldn't beat him, but we have this call for good money to face Anthony Dirrell, who's coming off a loss. Let's give this a shot.
Right.
I can understand why he went into this fight, why he took this fight. But now you have to make choices.
Yes.
And I think the better choice was to never fight anyone of Dirrell's caliber again.
Well, right.
If you want to keep fighting, you have to lower your expectations.
And as we've discussed before, and I'm sure we'll discuss again, there's always people you can beat. There's always people you can beat. And, again, if he's willing to go to Latvia, if he's willing to go to Hungary or bring the Hungarians over here, fine. Because there's always a guy who literally, and you guys go look on BoxRec, there's always a guy who has a record of 5 wins and 88 losses who will fight you.
Just like, by the way, our boy, the losingest boxer in Britain right now, Robin Deacon, who has 52 consecutive losses. What did they do? They brought him a Latvian.
Yes.
And he has a win.
Exactly.
And it was the best thing ever.
So Rubio can go do that. He'll be fine. And you can do that indefinitely. But in terms of fighting contenders, and again, this gatekeeper role that they seem to be grooming him for, for the sake of his kidneys and his brain cells, I can't see how that's worth it. Because
boxing is very unforgiving, okay? And they will bring him back. They if he decides to fight on, there will be a 13-0 fighter that they'll put him in against.
Yes.
Because his record is worth it.
Because he has a name.
They will, no one will make that choice for you.
Right.
Until it's way too late.
Well, right. Because it's like, there's so many examples of this. It's like, who we saw at the casino a couple years back in Hammond, Indiana, like Antoine Eccles.
Yeah.
As long as you have a name, it doesn't matter what's wrong with you.
Boxing doesn't care. Neither do the people who make the choices.
No, it doesn't matter.
There are no compassionate promoters out there. None. There really aren't.
None. There are people who will hire you for your name just to get you beat up, just so that they can say, my guy beat a name. It doesn't matter what your record is. It doesn't matter that, you might not have won like Antoine Eccles. He's probably below 500 right now. But he might still be fighting because someone can say, my guy beat Antoine Eccles, and Antoine Eccles challenged for a title. Doesn't matter when the title was, right? Doesn't matter when that title fight was. Doesn't matter if it was 97 or whenever it was. Yeah, my guy beat former world title challenger Antoine Eccles. That's a notch in his belt.
Well, Anthony Derell got the Rubio notch in his belt.
Right.
And again, did he look sharp? Did he look more aggressive than he did against Badu Jack? Yes, but he's also facing someone who was completely immobile, unable to defend himself. So you can only say it functioned as just getting Derell back in the ring and maybe boosting his confidence and whatnot. There is some value in that, but I don't think that we can make a determination about whether or not Derell is back or anything like that.
No.
Is he capable of beating Badu Jack? Absolutely. I think he fought the worst fight of his entire career against Badu Jack the first time. So I think he could absolutely fight Badu Jack or beat Badu Jack. Thing is Badu Jack going to beat George Groves on the undercard of Mayweather Berto?
That's not a guarantee.
That might, that's not a guarantee at all. In fact, you would probably favor Groves, maybe? I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people out there would pick Groves. You pull boxing writers out there that are picking Groves.
I like Groves is a great 6, 7, 8 round fighter, right? And then Jack, from the time we saw him at the casino at Turning Stone, walking to that right hand,
Derek Edwards,
that said a lot about Jack's chin in his defense. And he's much more cautious about things now. I just don't know that he's at the point where he's ever a prohibitive favorite, even against George Groves, maybe especially against George Groves.
Yeah. I think the one thing about Groves, you can say this about a lot of fighters, you could even say it about Badu Jack to a degree, but in the fights where it wasn't specifically lined up for Groves to win, the Froch fights, and I guess the Gale fight he did win, but every fight other than those three, they have been fights that have been specifically lined up for Groves to win.
Right.
You can say the same thing about Badu Jack, except he lost to Derek Edwards in one of those fights too, right? And then he won in a fight that he wasn't supposed to win against Anthony Derell. So you compare the resumes, and maybe there's a reason to favor Badu Jack.
Right, but again, the most important aspect of that is that this fight at least shapes up to be competitive.
Yes.
Whereas the main event on that card, on paper,
and in reality,
doesn't quite measure up to that same standard of competitiveness.
Of course, that main event is Floyd Mayweather taking on Andre Berto. We saw the second episode of All Access, the recap. And again, we're still pushing the narrative that this is Floyd's very last fight. We're starting to see more scenes of Floyd in this mentor role, where he's with kids, he's acting as a trainer. And I think that Floyd always has had some sort of an itch to be a trainer. We saw him in Jay Leon Love's corner when you and I were at the fights in Detroit.
Yes.
That I felt was more of just a promotional ploy.
Yes.
To take over the entire broadcast, because he was on commentary, he was up at the host booth with Brian Kenny, and then he was in the corner. He was doing everything.
He was harassing K9 Partridge's wife.
But I think that Floyd does have some kind of a complex, and you see it with all the hangers-ons that basically he funds. I think he does have some sort of complex where he likes to, I don't know if help is the right word, but he certainly likes to be of guidance to X number of people.
Well, he likes to position himself as a benefactor.
As the leader. Or as a benefactor,
Well, here's the difference, though, right? Mayweather is trainer. Let's really think about this. Because one thing a trainer has to be is completely attentive to other people. And I don't know how attentive Floyd Mayweather is used to people paying attention to him.
Yes.
Is Floyd Mayweather really gonna, unwrap someone's hands, really stick his fingers in someone's mouth between rounds, like all the unglamorous work that a trainer has to do? Is Floyd Mayweather really set up for a lifetime of that? No. The other problem with Floyd...
That'll be Nate Jones.
Right.
And he'll be the guy in the ring.
Well, the other problem with Floyd Mayweather is the same problem that, a lot of super talented athletes have. Is that it's just there's a complete inability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and have to learn something that you learned so easily. Right?
Yeah. Or can't even describe, perhaps, because it might have been completely natural.
Yes. This is the problem that Ted Williams had when he tried to become a hitting coach.
Right, yeah.
Because he could do things that no one else could do, and he
had a superhuman eye. You're like, whoa, that's a ball. You gotta watch it.
It's like the story
Ted, it looked good.
With Hank Aaron, and he was talking to one of his teammates about how to hit a curveball. And Hank Aaron says, well, when you see the seams of the ball, it's a curve. And the teammate said, you can see the seams? And Hank Aaron said, you can't see the seams? So there's all kinds of things that Mayweather can do. I don't know if he can conceive of someone not being able to do them.
Right.
And again, just the amount of attention a trainer has to pay to other people. It's a personality type as much as it's an accumulation of knowledge. And we don't know if he's a great communicator. I think he likes to play at training.
Yes.
But he's not going to be Freddie Roach.
Yeah, no.
Right?
No.
And with the hours he keeps, like, how can you run a gym that day? Hey.
Even Freddie Roach isn't really Freddie Roach, because Freddie Roach has an assistant to do a lot of things too. Like when you become a superstar trainer,
you outsource.
You outsource things.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So he would have to do that from jump.
Yes.
So, why not just let your best friend Nate Jones, who seems to be a good trainer,
let
him go with it.
That I think is what's going to happen. Episode 2, first of all, is there going to be an episode 3?
There should be an episode 3 like the day before, I imagine, or maybe not. Sometimes there is. I actually haven't seen the schedule.
Well, I just love, because you kind of see the best and the worst of Floyd Mayweather.
Yes.
Right? But also Floyd Mayweather, when he tries to when they publish footage that is supposed to be flattering to Floyd Mayweather or supposed to be supporting one of the points he's making, he still comes across as a bore, but he's not really self-aware.
No.
So,
which, by the way, we should hit the break. We'll touch on this actually after the break, because there's a lot to say on that.
Okay.
Actually. So we'll hit the commercial real quick. We'll be back with more Fight Network Boxing Weekly when we come back. All right, we are back on Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Corey Erdman, Morgan Campbell here with you in the Fight Network studios, broadcasting on SiriusXM channel 167. You sort of got cut off before we hit the break there, Morgan. We were talking about episode 2, All Access, Mayweather versus Berto. And you pointed out how amusing it is when, they try to show Floyd in an appealing light.
Yes.
And he still comes off as a boorish male.
Right. So, because you see Mayweather, I think it's in this episode where he's giving out the book bags to all the kids because they're getting ready to go back to school.
Yeah, and they're taking pictures. And
yes.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
That's great because all kinds of kids that don't, they don't have money.
It's great stuff when he was doing that with the homeless in Las Vegas too.
But then you see Floyd, because remember the previous episode, Floyd talked about Roger Mayweather's decline, his cognitive decline, the slowing of his reflexes. And it shows the two of them now in this episode in the gym and they're working the pads. And Floyd keeps saying to Roger, hey, I'm waiting on you. Like they're throwing punches in the middle of conversations. Like, get your hand there. I'm waiting on you. Get your hand there. I'm waiting on you. Now we've just finished discussing how years in the ring have worn down this guy's reflexes. And he doesn't move as quickly as he used to. And now Mayweather, instead of saying, hey, have the day off, Uncle Roger, or I will just go through the motions with you because it makes you happy. He's over here hectoring this old man who we've established is slowing down. He's hectoring. I'm waiting on, of course you're waiting on him, Floyd. We've already established that he's slower than he used to be, and you're still fast.
So he's stuck between telling him you can't do this at all and really discouraging Roger.
Right.
Or using him, in a role in camp that he actually needs.
Yes.
And getting frustrated about it.
Right.
But just don't show that. See, here's what's funny.
Yes.
Watch the end of the show.
Yeah.
No surprise. Who's the first credit?
Floyd Mayweather.
Executive producer Floyd Mayweather. So he should believe me that he sees the shot list. He sees every aspect of this epised, every episode, and decides what goes in, and he determines, that's good for air. Right. I want to show that. I want people to see that. So that actually, when we say they are trying to show Floyd in a positive light, Floyd is trying to show Floyd in a positive light, and he still comes out the way that he comes out.
Well, right. And then there's the scene at the end. Is it the end when he's taking a shower?
Oh, yeah. It's close to the end, yeah. Before he gets in the hot tub.
Yeah, and he tells, I don't know which woman in his entourage this is. He was like, hey, come wash my back. And here comes this woman. She comes and washes Floyd's back. Now, for a guy who is trying really hard to dispel the idea or to show that he has grown out of his misogyny, his violent misogyny, there are better ways to prove that you're no longer a misogynist than to summon some woman to come scrub your back on camera.
Such as having the first female NFL coach walk you to the ring.
But before we get to that, so Mayweather's in the shower, because again, it's a reality series, but much of this stuff is staged. And I'm sure when Dan Rayfield learns that Floyd Mayweather actually doesn't shower in his boxing trunks, he's going to kick his television. What do you mean this was staged? What do you mean it wasn't real? But here we have this spontaneous moment where Floyd's in the shower. Hey, spontaneous, I'm showering and I have women scrubbing me in the shower, but he's half clothed. No one's half clothed in the shower. It says that the shower wasn't spontaneous.
Well, hold on now. Before you get into the swimming pool or the hot tub, you're supposed to shower so that you don't, But you don't have the woman scrub your back when you're in that shower, like in theory. I don't know. Obviously, the whole thing's ridiculous.
Another completely spontaneous scene.
Because she's there in like a New Year's dress. And he's showering at the pool. Like, we're at the pool here. Yeah, of course. There are a lot of giveaways.
Completely spontaneous.
Dead giveaways.
Oh
I mentioned Floyd's,
yes,
Floyd's ring walk. So this has become a big thing now, too.
Yes, because you're not allowed to like Floyd.
No, you can't. So even though he offers Jen the opportunity to walk him to the ring, and she accepted, has she now reneged and said, okay, I can't do it anymore?
Yeah, well, the last I saw, they were negotiating her role. Because the first thing she did was accept.
Right.
And then people said, well, how dare you hang out with his wife beater? And then she said, well, if he's open to meeting with me, maybe I can change his mind about some stuff.
Right.
And I can affect more people by talking to him by not talking to him.
Right.
But at the same time, Jen Welter does have to understand that she is like, when they would have like a big golf tournament at some country club in the South, that didn't have black members, and they would, we need a black member. We need to integrate so we can have these big tournaments. So they would call, I don't know, O.J. Simpson, or they would call like or a Ben Carson type, and these guys don't have much pride. They're like, yeah, well, I'll be your token, and then we can have the tournament. So this is what Jen Welter was about to be, right? Floyd Mayweather,
Arthur Ashe.
I need a high profile woman on my side, and not just a high profile woman, like a high profile pioneering woman on my side. So she could be my shield against any allegations that I'm still a misogynist.
Right.
And Jen Welter said, yeah, I'll be that person. Which I guess is her prerogative. But at the same time, she had to know there would be some backlash. Because there's ways that because even male celebrities, remember Mike Trout tweeted, yeah, money may all day or whatever it was, and people jumped all down his throat. I can't cheer for you anymore, Mike Trout. And I don't know why Welter didn't see it coming, but now it's at her feet.
Don't go see Straight Outta Compton then either. You can't, we can go on and on and on and on.
Exactly.
We've done that segment already.
Exactly.
Let's talk about Floyd's opponent, Andre Berto.
Andre Berto.
Yeah, let's talk about Andre Berto. I had the opportunity to spend the week with Virgil Hunter, so I heard a little bit more about his preparation and whatnot. Listen, I'm still not sold on Andre Berto being competitive in this fight. Do not get me wrong. One thing I did find interesting, technically, in speaking with Virgil, we always ask the question, how do you beat Mayweather's shoulder roll? And everyone has a different answer. Some people say, well, you just need to be a southpaw. Right. If you're a southpaw, then I'll just take care of it. We've sort of dispelled that notion. You need to apply some pressure. Got close, but we've sort of dispelled that notion as well. The one thing that Virgil said is that the best way, if you want to have any hope of doing anything against Floyd, if you can't throw at the shoulder, because as he pointed out, even watching his mitt work, what do they do every single time in the middle of sequences?
Yes.
Throw it at shoulder. And the shoulder is basically like his trigger to close it off, hide his right hand, and be able to come back with it, and you can't see it. So as he explained, the best way that you could possibly, if you have any hope of doing anything against Floyd and his shoulder roll, or anyone with a shoulder roll, is to keep his right hand as active as you possibly can by throwing at the right hand. Yes. Even if he's going to pick it off, you have to make him use that and knock those shots down.
Yes.
So if Berto has any chance of doing anything in this fight, he needs to jab as often as humanly possible and jab at that hand all night long, or he's just going to get demolished.
With his surgically reconstructed right shoulder, or left shoulder.
Right. I don't know that he has that in his arsenal.
The times we've seen people hit Mayweather, we saw Mosley do it, not with a straight right hand, kind of an overhand roundhouse right hand high on the
catching
temple.
Him leaning,
Yes, and then Maidana just kept landing that weird vertical high arcing like an axe chop.
Going over the shoulder.
The axe blade.
Right,
punch.
The Tatanka.
Yes.
Where he was like just chop people. Yeah, yes. Right.
And that punch landed until it didn't. Berto's problem is, and remember we were watching we were watching the PBC broadcast, and Paulie Malignaggi was talking about Marco Antonio Rubio, and he said, watch Rubio, he never counters. He's and Malignaggi called him a my turn, your turn fighter. You hit him, and he just covers up, he goes full defensive, and then when he's ready to punch, he starts punching. But he's not going to punch with you, he's not going to slip and counter, none of that. And he might as well have been describing Andre Berto, and that's going to be Andre Berto's problem, right? Because people say, every guy that goes in against Mayweather says, well,
I'm gonna be busier.
I got to be busier. Two, I have the solution on how to beat the shoulder roll. But the problem is, there's so much more to Mayweather than the shoulder roll. Okay, so you beat the shoulder roll. Great. He's got 50 other things that he does. Sure. The shoulder roll is the one thing you focus on.
And we have seen him just put the guard up and walk guys down too.
Yes.
We saw him against Mosley.
He did it against Mosley.
Yeah.
Did it against, going back to Zab Judah.
Yeah.
Ricky Hatton, he just fought on the inside till that got boring, and he just stepped back and walked Hatton into shots. Mayweather has a lot of ways to win. He might come out, if he comes out aggressively like he did early against Canelo, then Berto can just pack it in. Because Berto, if you're punching Berto, Berto's going to cover. And then when you stop, that's when Berto might punch you back. And again, this is what frustrates a lot of people about Berto, because Berto is the fighter who's really broken the relationship between speed and creativity. Most boxers that are really fast are also really creative. Berto is amazingly fast, but just very basic. And this is his
creativity is his uppercut. Which honestly is his best chance in this fight, is to land a home run uppercut.
Yeah, because it's the pet combination that he picked up from Mike Tyson.
Yeah,
that Mike Tyson hit Frank Bruno with. The right hook to the body, right uppercut, right. Boom, boom.
Problem is, with the shoulder roll in general, it defends wonderfully against the uppercut because you have this here.
Yes.
So it picks it off before it even comes up. More so than anyone with a conventional stance because you do have that lane to at least get it there before it gets picked off. But it doesn't get there against someone who has their elbow out like that.
Right. It's not a question.
It doesn't get started.
Yes, it's not a question because with most fighters, it's a question of getting your uppercut between their gloves.
Exactly, yeah. But you can throw it.
Yes. But Mayweather doesn't always give you that space between his gloves.
Right.
So then what? What I like about Berto is that he's determined. There are very few fighters as determined as Berto.
He won't give up in the fight.
But and if our friend Ed Masonette from Fox Sports and the Sports Fans Journal is watching, Berto reminds me of if you follow football. I've written about it too. He's like Ahmad Carroll, who in high school and college, this guy's like this amazing sprinter. Played football. He could cover anyone. He's a cornerback. Technically he was really raw, but he could just outrun his mistakes. And he did that until the moment that he couldn't. He got to the NFL, he couldn't outrun his mistakes anymore. And now there are just whole highlight reel films of, versus Ahmad Carroll highlights. Every time you looked up, someone was running past him. He's still this ridiculously fast guy, but he never bothered to learn the little things that allow, NFL corners to cover people that super fast guys from college can't necessarily do. And this is Berto. Berto's super fast, super strong, but for whatever reason, never bothered to learn, the little things that make you a boxer as opposed to just a super fast, super strong guy in the ring throwing punches.
And he gets this chance nonetheless. And again, you can't say, is he as deserving as the other top 10 welterweights for getting this? Not necessarily, but, Andre Berto has taken some beatings in his career, and, you deserve every dollar you make in the sport of boxing. I will say that, and I never hate on anyone for making a payday. He's made some very good ones.
It depends on how you define entitlement. Does he deserve this? Is he entitled to it? Is he the most famous? No, but that's not the game they're playing right now. And this is the best payday Andre Berto is going to get. And to your point, he's taken a lot of beatings. He's not the best fighter, but he's among the hardest working. Again, I don't know that I, like as a private citizen, would pay to watch this on pay-per-view. But as a matchup, I really don't mind it.
No. It should be.
See Andre Berto.
It's going to be. We're going to have a lot of amusing talk. We've had plenty into it and coming out of it as well. It will produce that at the very least. We'll talk a little bit more about the fight when we come back. We'll also talk about Stevenson and Karpency, which is coming to our hometown of Toronto. We'll hit on that when we come back after the break, right here on Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Welcome back to Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Corey Urban, Morgan Campbell here in the Fight Network studios. Also on Sirius XM channel 167, Sirius XM Canada Talks. It's Mayweather Berto Fight Week. Here in Toronto, it is also Stevenson Karpency Fight Week, as that fight's going to be on Spike TV, Premier Boxing Champions, Friday night, lights out on Friday night here from the Ricoh Coliseum. Adonis Stevenson defending his lineal light heavyweight title, trying to generate some big buzz about boxing here in Toronto. We've had a lot of local cards.
Yes.
And a lot of them have drawn particularly well out in Mississauga, a suburb of Toronto for our non-Canadian and non-Torontonian viewers out there. But this is the first world title fight in Toronto since 1982 when Aaron Pryor defended his light welterweight title against Nicky Furlano. Yep. It's been a long time since we've had a fight here, a big fight like this, for a variety of reasons. Now the challenge is getting people here excited about a Haitian who relocated to Quebec, defending his title here in Toronto, and that is the challenge that the local promoters and everyone has for this card.
Yeah, and it's you can sell the idea. You can sell Stevenson's track record. You can put that KO of Chad Dawson on a loop and say, this is what this guy can do. This is what this guy can do. But the reality is, we're in Toronto when the Blue Jays are in the midst of a playoff run. Team Canada's over here qualifying for the Olympics in basketball for the first time since 2000. It's September, so hockey season is never far away. And you have now this boxing card trying to break through all this clutter and all this attention that's being paid to all these other sporting events. So it's not an easy thing to do. And this is nothing against the people involved. But now you've got Stevenson, again, because he's not from Toronto. So you kind of have to find a way to make local fans embrace him. And it's not easy because we've seen it, for Canadian boxing fans. You remember Steve Molitor, the Canadian kid, and he had that run of fights at Casino Rama, and then his promoters tried to piggyback on that, and they started bringing over people from the Philippines.
Yes, right. Because there went Pacquiao Mania,
Anna Hulatin.
Yeah. Marvin Sansona. The other guys too, yeah.
And another guy that wasn't really good at all.
No. But those are the two main ones.
Ciso Morales.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right. And they thought that there would just be like this natural passing of the torch. And there wasn't. It really is. It's not a simple thing to get mainstream sports fans or even niche sports fans here in Toronto really to embrace someone that's not from Toronto. And that's a challenge. And then, all kinds of respect to Karpency. He's just kind of too quiet and too polite and too respectful to be the person to ignite this event.
Yeah, or to be a part of any big promotion.
And just to say the type of inflammatory things to get people to pay attention.
If he could, he would have been signed by a major promoter a long time ago.
Well, right.
And I think that the one thing working in favor of this card is, you can sell sort of local events, lower caliber events, to small towns and places anywhere.
Yes.
When I was in Corpus Christi, it was like the big thing. The boxing was in town. I didn't even have to bring it up. And, like my Uber driver was like, oh, you going to the boxing event this weekend? Because it was the big thing happening in town. As you mentioned, everything's happening in Toronto.
Yes.
If you're in New York, everything's happening in New York. Chicago, same thing, these big cities. But at least this has... The one thing working for it is that if you were curious about it, you saw the poster and you looked it up, like A, who's Adonis Stevenson, B, what is Premier Boxing Champions, you would see that there is some cachet here that, this is a legitimate card that's coming here.
Yes.
So if you were to research, if you were to look into it, at least it has something behind it. It has substance.
Right. And these are people, that, like Stevenson especially, and Errol Spence, who are likely to appear on TV elsewhere. And the other smart thing the promoters did was that they just loaded the undercard with like a lot of local people.
That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
Bring their fans with them. Right. It's not an undercard that's full of as much potential as these Al Heyman prospects might have. They don't have a following here.
No.
But Sandy Seguras does.
Right. We have a couple, there are a couple Heyman fighters on there, like Pritchard Colon they put on there. I forget who else, but he's the main name that stood out. But then the rest are just our local guys.
Right. Local people and people from Montreal, people who Montreal fans might like enough to make the trip.
Sure.
Down the 401. But again, I was just talking with Lennox Lewis this morning, interviewing him at the press conference, and he said, "Well, it's a shame that you kind of have to act like an ass and say stupid stuff to draw attention to yourself and to your fights, but at the same time, if that's what it takes." That's what it takes.
Have to do.
Even when he referenced Mike Tyson cursing out Nathan Downer on CP24 around this time last year, and it was really boorish behavior. But it focused attention on what Mike Tyson was doing in Toronto that week and put his one-man show in the spotlight. But there's no one on this card that's really capable of or inclined, toward that type of crazy trash talk, which is good for them as individuals, but it's tougher to get people like, I work in the mainstream media. I work at the Toronto Star. I'll cover the fight, but to get people at other mainstream outlets that aren't as plugged into boxing, to get them to pay attention.
Yeah. And of course we hope that it does well, but maybe you have to have a card that doesn't do particularly well just to get that off the ground.
Yes.
And from Heyman's perspective, from the Heyman camp's perspective, they care about television.
Yes.
They care about this looking good on television and selling commercials.
Yes.
The promotion of it is completely on the local promoters.
Right.
That's on Yvonne Michelle. That's on Global Legacy Boxing. That's on them to make sure the tickets are get sold. That is their concern. So they have to focus on that.
But those two things are interrelated. Because
of course.
If these guys can't sell tickets, it doesn't look good on TV.
Right. Oh, I know. Right? Yeah.
And so
they're going to get rid of those tickets one way or the other.
One way or the other. And this is kind of some of the tension talking to local trainers, because they're like, well, I have a fighter, at the local cards, at the cards in Mississauga, I have a fighter, and this fighter will sell 10 tables, the ringside tables. If it's $1,500 a table, he or she will get 5 or 6 different groups of people to come by these tables.
Doesn't work like that up here, man.
Yeah, in the city now, it's a much higher price point. So, the trainers are saying, well, where's our tables? We'll sell all kinds of tables. And the promoters are saying, well, no, go sell these tickets.
How about some tickets? Yeah.
Because the tables cost a lot more.
Yes.
But the question is, are the people who have $7,500 to spend going to spend it on a ringside table at this event, right? And that's part of the tension. That's one of the subplots here, right?
Well, the best plot for me leading up to this fight, editorially, is Errol Spence being on the card.
Yes.
And the fact that Errol Spence, now we mentioned that Lennox Lewis is part of the local promotion here.
Yes.
So Errol Spence was first introduced to boxing, became interested in boxing, because the barbershop in his hometown, his family is Jamaican.
Yes.
Barbershop was owned by a Jamaican family as well. And they had the bootleg black box hookup on Lennox Lewis pay-per-view fights. So they went to watch the fights there, and now here he is fighting on a card promoted by Lennox Lewis. And hey, anyone who is interested in boxing had their start in that way.
Yes.
I grew up watching boxing because my uncles, I saw pay-per-view boxing because my uncles had the black box bootleg hookup for all the pay-per-view boxing, so I never missed anything. So that's how I got to where I am, and clearly Errol Spence goes through the same path, and I bet every one of you out there have the same story. Somehow you had the hookup on the fights when you were younger.
Well, it's also like...
No one has money to pay $60 for everything growing up.
No, and it's also like the Jamaicanest thing ever that Errol Spence's family figured out that Lennox Lewis was Jamaican, because here you have a guy born in England, raised in Canada, turns pro, goes back to England, but his folks knew one way or the other, like, this guy got to be Jamaican.
So everyone claims Lennox. That's totally fine.
This is our guy.
That's totally fine.
This is our guy. And the other thing that I'm just going to guess that Errol Spence has family here, which just wouldn't surprise me, just given the fact that he's a Jamaican American. I would bet. You just ask him randomly. When I was in university, that's how I could tell when I would meet, like black kids, other black students, if their family was Jamaican, because they'd be like, well, oh, you're from Toronto? I got cousins there. Like, you're Jamaican, aren't you? How'd you know? You just told me.
You've been to Carabana? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it would not surprise me to learn. It would not surprise me to see a little Errol Spence cheering section of some local cousins.
I'm excited to see Spence live, and I've seen him live a couple of times.
Yes.
And I'm excited to see him on this card. It's a nice touch. And he's facing Chris Van Heerden. This is an interesting step that every fighter has to take in their career, where this is the first time that Spence has fought a guy who doesn't distinctively know that he's brought in as the opponent.
Yes.
So people say, this is definitely the best guy that Spence has fought. Do I think that Spence is going to win? Yes. And Spence should win this fight. But it is still a step that everyone makes, because Van Heerden is still ranked like number 7, I think, by the WBA. So in his mind...
Now, is Van Heerden undefeated?
He's still... if he has lost, it's only once. But in his mind, he's still a contender. Everyone else that Spence has fought, for the most part, is coming in thinking, hey, I'm the underdog, I'm the opponent. They had, in some fashion, that mentality. But on this night, he's going to face a guy who doesn't think that way. And that is an interesting step.
Yeah, he has one loss. It was 5 years ago.
Yeah, right. That's why,
in Serbia.
Yes.
Right, and this is, it's not the gatekeeper fight. It's not the trial horse fight.
It's also not the big step up. It's somewhere in between.
It's somewhere right in between, exactly. And this is one of these things where, if Spence is as good as they say he is...
this is where you look your very best.
This is where you have to look your very best, right? And like Yvonne Michelle at the news conference this morning said, hey, I want all you guys to remember when you come, like fans that come sit in the stands and you see this, and you'll be able to say, this is the first time you saw Errol Spence. One way or the other, that's true. But is it going to be, I saw that all-time great, I saw him when he was young, or is it going to be, what happened to Errol Spence? Remember that guy we saw in Toronto?
I saw him struggle. Ago? This wasn't real.
Well, right.
Yeah.
So this is a real test for him.
We'll find out this weekend. But Morgan, that is all the time we have for this week's episode. You got to ring the bell again.
No, wait. Let me ring it again.
All right, we can do it once more.
Yes.
That's a legitimate ring. There we go. That is all the time we have for this week's episode of Fight Network Boxing Weekly. If you're on the radio side, MMA Meltdown Radio with Gabe Morency is up next. We'll see you guys next week.